The Ego and the Spirit Connection, Part 2. A spiritual wake-up call. The purpose of this talk is to express my spiritual perspective on war, peace, love, and terrorism. As you know, the world is filled up with opposites. But all opposites are null and void up against the most important and significant opposites of all: awake or asleep. Now, when I talk about being awake or asleep, I'm sure you know that I'm not talking about awake as in, I'm awake, it's time to get up, or asleep as in snoring. No. When I talk about being awake or asleep, I am actually describing two different levels of awareness, two different states of consciousness, if you will. When I talk about being awake, I am talking about being spiritually awake to the inner truth that will set each and every one of us free. And so, what is this truth, you might ask? The inner truth that will set all of us free is that our entire world, our entire civilization, the universe and beyond, is all one whole, complete, cohesive unit. Everything is tied together in a webwork of energy. We are all connected to each other, and we are all connected to God. God is in us, and we are in God. In Him, we live and move and have our being. I stress the word inner truth because this truth lies deep, deep down inside of all of us, just waiting for our recognition. Therefore, those who have awakened to this realization know that if they strike out at another, they are actually striking out at a part of themselves. And those who are spiritually awake know that when a country strikes out at another country, that country is actually harming a part of itself. Therefore, when it comes to war, terrorism, or any other harmful acts of destruction that the unawakened parts of humanity chooses to inflict upon itself, those who are spiritually awake will be the first ones to step forward to at least attempt to wake the others up by promoting peace. Those who are still asleep and in a spiritually unawakened mental state, which is also known as a state of forgetfulness, is a part of humanity that has bought into an entirely different set of ideas and beliefs. This is a part of humanity that believes in separation. This part of humanity believes that we are all separate from each other and we are all separate from God. This part of humanity believes that we gotta get them before they get us. This is a part of humanity that gets off on power and control. Therefore, when it comes to war, terrorism, or any other harmful acts, this part of humanity will be the first to step forward to promote a reason to attack. This unawakened part of humanity has also forgotten that the universal law of karma will see to it that the victim and the victimizer will meet again. To our detriment, there has always been and still are parts of humanity spread out all over the world in self-created, self-elected, self-inflicted, self-deluded positions of power. These are the ones who are currently influencing others from these spiritually unawakened lower levels of consciousness. This is a segment of humanity that has convinced itself that no matter what negative scenarios it chooses to act out, God is on its side. And now that humanity has allowed its technological development to get ahead of its spiritual development, the wisest, most peaceful, and permanent way out of this dilemma is to wake up. One of the major reasons many of our institutions appear to be failing us is because it's time to make room for something new and to help us wake up to the new way of existing in the world. There is no message more important to get across to all of humanity than that we are all connected to the same spiritual source. It is also important to note that when it comes to the ultimate truth, there is no force in existence powerful enough to overpower the powerful force of God's love. The objective is to wake everyone up to this realization. Now, with that said, I'm going to delve a little deeper into the idea of unity and of how everything is connected. I'm going to use two different analogies. In the first analogy, I'm going to talk about what needs to be done to wake up. And in the second analogy, I'm going to talk about the consequences of not waking up. Let's say that the lowest, slowest, and most dense vibrational level of energy represents the three-dimensional frequency range that our conscious mind is currently tuned into. This is where the ego, which is a part of ourself that we are the most familiar with, resides. As you can see, on this level, even though we are all breathing the same invisible air, and we are all existing in and made out of the same God-created energy, we appear to be separate entities, separate countries, and separate planets, because there seems to be space between all of us. The density and sense of separation in this realm of reality is what makes the physical realm so challenging. Now, moving on up, beyond our five senses to a faster, lighter vibrational level, represents our subconscious mind, also known as the unconscious self. We are not as familiar with this part of ourself. This is where everything we have ever experienced or been exposed to in any given lifetime is stored. Moving on up to an even faster and lighter vibrational level represents man's superconsciousness, also known as cosmic consciousness. In some spiritual circles, this is also known as Christ consciousness. This area represents our connection to our higher self. This is a part of us that knows that everything is connected. This part of us knows about our spiritual connection to the source of our being. This part of us knows that all that is God. It's important to point out that the higher part of ourself, Our true self is always attempting to get valuable, deeply needed spiritual information back out to our ego self. This spiritual information can help to increase the quality of our life immensely. Unfortunately, because of the random chatter that is constantly going on in our mind, and because of our preoccupation with our physical life experience, the ego part of us is extremely difficult to get through to. But when we do allow ourselves to open up to these higher, deeper mental states of cosmic consciousness, this level of awareness will create within us the feeling of being home. When we wake up to this spiritual mental state, we will experience the deepest, most profound, intense, and overwhelming feeling of unconditional love that we can ever imagine. All of our spiritual, emotional, and psychological needs will be fulfilled from within. When we tap into this part of ourselves, we will know that we will never, ever need anything outside of ourselves to feel complete. All of our physical needs will be taken care of by our higher self, by making sure that we are always in the right place, with the right person, at the right time. Our deepest desire will be to spread love, peace, and harmony in the world. And we will also have a strong desire to help others wake up. The objective is to get our entire civilization as a whole to wake up to this inner truth. The unawakened parts of humanity is the root cause of all of our problems. So how do we wake up? Near-death experiences have helped some of us wake up. There are those who have awakened after being healed of a serious disease. Others have awakened after a bout of grief or depression. This is also known as a dark night of the soul. Back in the 60s and 70s, in controlled environments, there were those who experimented with LSD, and some of these people reported glimpses into their deeper self. But I must say that meditation is an honest and definite way to help us reach those higher states of consciousness. A daily practice of meditation will help us to silence our mind. The silence will provide us with an opportunity to receive intuitive guidance from our higher self. Daily prayer, affirmations, or perhaps chanting a spiritual mantra can also help us wake up to these higher states of consciousness. Now I'm going to use another analogy to talk about the consequences of not waking up. Okay, let's take a moment to think about our body. Let's think about how all of the cells and organs in our body work in complete harmony with each other for the sole purpose of keeping our body in working order. Now let's say that all of a sudden, the white blood cells start to feel threatened by the red blood cells. And as a result, the white blood cells begin to feel a need to defend themselves against the red blood cells. And what if the red and white blood cells started fighting and polarizing themselves against each other for the sole purpose of taking over our body? Now, pushing this idea out a little farther, let's say that all of the cells that make up our liver started thinking of themselves as a separate country, and all of the cells that make up our kidney started thinking of themselves as another separate country. And what if all of the cells that make up our heart and all of the cells that make up our lungs started competing for the position of the superpower of our body. I would also like to add, what if all of our separate organs had different religious beliefs? This would create an even deeper sense of separation. Now let's say that all of the cells that make up our organs have cells in charge who call the shots and make decisions for the citizen cells. And the cells in charge might have an agenda that may or may not be in our body's best interest. Okay. What if the cells in charge of our heart looked over at our liver and decided that our liver has way more than its fair share of blood? And let's say the organ that gains control over our blood supply also gains control over our entire body. So the cells in charge of our heart start making plans to take over our liver's blood supply for the sole purpose of gaining power over our entire body. But the cells in charge of our heart know that our heart's citizen cells will not go along with that plan. So the cells in charge of our heart lie to our heart's citizen cells and tell them that our liver poses a threat to them because they have been stockpiling bacteria and viruses, and they are planning on using the bacteria and viruses to destroy them. So, out of fear, our heart citizen cells give the cells in charge of our heart permission to send well-trained, youthful soldier cells to attack our liver. Now, just when our liver's blood supply has been taken over by our heart, and our liver is losing its ability to sustain our body's good health, the cells in charge of our lungs, the other competing superpower, is also interested in our body's blood supply. So they start looking in the direction of our heart. And then they start to prepare their plan of attack. What would any one of us think this situation would do to our overall health if this kind of chaos were to break out between the cells and organs inside of our body? What does this type of chaos do to the body of the earth, which also happens to be a living and breathing organism on which we human cells live and move and have our being? Earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, volcanic eruptions are just a few of the ways in which Mother Earth seeks relief from all of the negative energy caused by the wars, the bickering, and the conflict of the unawakened parts of humanity. As long as our civilization believes in separation, and it continues to use death and destruction to reach its objectives, in the long run, we all lose, even those who think they win. We cannot solve our problems on the same chaotic mental level that we created them on. We have to wake up to the realization that we are all one. This wake-up call goes out to whomever it may concern.